Hello and welcome to our Kingdom Conversations. Today we're talking about being a winsome witness. And today we have a special guest, speaker of the Lutheran Hour. We've got Reverend Dr. Mike Zeigler. And Mike, we're so glad to have you joining us. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me into the conversation, Trevor.
Yeah, no, it's been great. A big fan of the Lutheran Hour, big fan of your winsome witness taking over as Lutheran Hour. How long ago did that transition happen?
It was October of 2018, so just a little under 3 years.
Okay, so long enough to feel like you know what you're doing, but still somewhat fresh in the role.
Yeah, sort of.
Yep, there was a turning point for me when I'd been at St. Luke for, I can remember, about 6 years maybe or something, but then I realized I've been here long enough that I can't blame people before me or things before me, so you still got
well, that's good to know that it happened at the 6-year point. So I still got some time.
You got time for the honeymoon to pass.
Yeah.
I always say the first 3 years, you can't do anything wrong. The second 3 years, you can't get anything right. And then after that, you get to work.
There you go.
Okay. Well, that is a great perspective.
6 years is a magic
Only
number, nonetheless.
Slightly demoralizing, but
yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thanks, Mike, for being here. Also, we've got Pastor Davis joining us. Also, Chuck Bennett. And Chuck is one of our elders here at St. Luke, but also, and maybe folks don't know this, but also the president of Michigan LLL, which is Lutheran Laymen's League. So, Chuck, thanks for joining us as well.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we got Lutheran Hour speaker, and you have a special opportunity to be that speaker in the fact that you talk to a really broad audience. And tell us a little bit about that. Who are you talking to as Lutheran Hour speaker? You're not seeing these people necessarily. And how do you sort that out? Who are you talking to?
Well, the smart people there at Lutheran Hour Ministries, they estimate about 1 million people listen once a week to the program, either on the radio stations that we broadcast it on or the internet, different platforms there. So, it's pretty hard to try to imagine what 1 million people listening looks like. I know that a lot of it is long-time Lutherans listen, but there's also, from surveys we've done, seems to be a fair amount of people who are not Lutheran but Christian, and then a smaller percentage of people who are not affiliated at all with any kind of church or church background. So it's a pretty broad group of people. I've met a few and talked to a few, and just to give you a flavor of it, I've talked with Lester on the phone from South Dakota. He's 90 years old. And I know that Peggy in Southern California, she's a lifelong Lutheran. She listens. I had somebody tell me that their cab driver, an African-American man in North St. Louis, said that he listens every week. I've had a pastor reach out to me and say that the gas station attendant that he went to, and he's a pastor in Alaska, is a 20-year-old man who doesn't go to church, but he says he listens to the Lutheran Hour on Sundays. There was a man named Jason who reached out recently, said that he's new to religion, but has found the program and has been listening to back episodes on the podcast. So it's, and then my biggest fans, my mom and my dad, they listen too.
How do you think through the different people that you talk with, maybe especially ages? How do you, or what do you have with age demographics, do you think?
It's probably older than me for the most part. So somewhere in the maybe 60s, 70s is the predominant age group. And that's partly because of it's such a historic program. Like, so Lester, for example, we've been broadcasting for 90 years. And it's the longest running Christian broadcast in the world. So it's a great heritage that people have come to love. So it seems like it's a little older than me as a speaker. I'm just, what am I, 42? So realizing that I'm speaking to people who are older than me, but I'm also trying to deliberately speak to somebody who's my age or younger without alienating the long-term, faithful listener.
I'll tell you,
It's kind of like being a pastor in a church,
Well, and it makes you despair a little bit, I would imagine, in your own ability to speak to all those people winsomely, directly. I mean, you can't, right? You don't even know who they are. And so in some way, you've got to yield yourself over to the work of the Spirit, the power of God's word, and say, this is never going to happen if it's all about me. There's got to be a power.
You're absolutely right. Right. Yeah. So I know that in my experience, one thing that can grab almost everybody's attention all the time, regardless of age or background, is a story. So in the first place, it's really great that when God gave us his word, about 75 to 80% of that word is in story form. So that's just a good place to start, to remember that our scriptures are really exciting, dynamic, strange, mysterious stories that we can just tell winsomely, and that grabs people's attention.
Yeah, Chuck, got any questions?
So much division in America. How do you consider the various perspectives of people when you're trying to talk to them about Jesus, especially in the context of a sermon?
Well, it's very difficult, like Pastor Sutton said, to speak to everyone, but to make the effort is important. And so I can't visit with my people in the same way like I could when I was a parish pastor, but I can listen to people that I know. I can read widely. I can try to understand what the cultural currents are. And what we're doing in all of this is we're just, as speakers of the gospel, whether that as a called pastor or a lay person, we're practicing empathy. We're trying to understand where people are coming from before we speak up, so we know how to speak to them. And you see Jesus doing this. He has a different word for a different person, for a different situation, depending on what's going on. So he's got a different word for children, and he's got a different word for the woman from Samaria at the well. He's got a different word for the rich ruler who thinks he can earn God's favor. He graciously adapts his speech to the person in front of him. And that's what we're trying to do. And again, I can't know for sure who's listening, but I can at least make an attempt to practice that empathy.
And I think with that, you say Jesus talked to this person, this person, this person, like the rich man. But there's also a sense in which he's been speaking to every rich man since. There's a thing that there are particularities, but then there are also some things that are commonalities. And, I would think that's part of what you do as well. There are some things that a million people have in common, maybe, as part of your perspective.
Absolutely.
Pastor Davis, what's your
exactly
your line about there's like 6 variations of people you knew in high school?
Yeah, I think there are 12 human beings on the face of the earth. We're just a iteration of some other kid from high school.
Yeah. So the woman at the well is a particular person in history that Jesus spoke with, but every human being has this deep spiritual thirst that needs to be quenched. And that's an assumption that I can apply to everybody. And it's one that I know intimately because I feel it myself. I know what it's like to yearn for approval. I know what it's like to be ashamed. I know what it feels like to be loved and accepted in spite of all that. So there's these, Dr. Meyer, one of the former speakers of Lutheran, not the original, the Meyer, Meyer. I asked him this question when I first started speaking, and he said, Michael, and going with what you were saying, Pastor Dave, that everybody's got the same kinds of emotions that I have. And so I can connect with them through that.
Yeah, one of my favorite books, Henry Nouwen's Wounded Healer. But he basically says, what do we have in common? We all know what it feels like to be wounded, to hurt, and the surface differences may be profound, but you get below that, and boy, we have a lot of things in common, and we all need Jesus. Right.
Yeah. And founder of our church body, Dr. CFW Walther, he says how that the law, the weight of what we know we ought to do but don't do, that's everybody's constant guest all the time.
Yep.
So I know these things about the people that I'm speaking with, even though I don't know them in their particulars.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I'm excited about this conversation. We've got more sessions coming up. So thanks, Dr. Zeigler, for being part of this. And thanks for everyone for watching and listening to this kingdom conversation. So goodbye for now, and we'll pick you up next session.